I don't really know why the person who constructed it like this, but I guess it worked. And I'm gonna be adding that detail with a bamboo mat. Second coat is finished. So that is gonna dry. Perfect. Oh, I love this. Hey everybody, welcome to Furniture Flipping Teacher. I'm Lauren, and today I am taking you along the transformation of this 3-piece set for one of my clients. My client reached out to me via Instagram and asked me if I would be willing to basically make these 3 pieces of furniture match, and she wants them to be very timeless. So we are gonna take these pieces that don't really match at all and make them into something that goes more together. I love doing this with furniture because there's no reason that it needs to be the exact match when we can kind of recreate some things and make them look like they were from the same set. For all my flippers out there, just a quick pro tip: if you're interested in getting more custom work or having people locally find you, be sure that you are posting on Instagram and Facebook and then tagging your location. That way when people are searching that location, they can also see that you flip furniture and maybe they would be interested. We have tons of people reach out via Instagram, so that is a great little hack, even if you don't want to become a full-time content creator. One cool thing about these pieces that I thought was pretty neat was that my client found these all for free. So the buy-in for her is pretty low initially, and then she has me flipping these pieces, and we'll go over all of the numbers at the end of the video. I'm gonna go ahead and get the hardware off so we can clean. So this is exactly why we want to take the hardware off before cleaning, because underneath there tends to be a lot of that dust that just accumulates there over time, and it's important that we get that area cleaned up as well. All right, now that we've got all that hardware off, we are ready to clean. And this video is sponsored by Dixie Belle Paint Company, so I'm gonna be using all of their products. Let me grab my White Lightning. Forgot to say, these 3 pieces of furniture individually are probably the heaviest pieces that we have ever gotten, like individually, and these are nightstands. I don't know what in the world, why. There's like tons of particle board that it's made of and plywood. So these things are so heavy. So I've got them propped up on my hardwood movers. That way I can just easily maneuver them around my garage, and I don't have to worry about lifting them very often when they're on here, because I could just roll them around. So I'll link those down below in the description. But time to clean. I've got my White Lightning cleaner in this bottle. It's this granule substance that's like a TSP soap, and it dissolves in water, and then you're able to spray it onto the surface of the piece that you're cleaning and then just wipe it down. Well, these drawers are kind of sticking, not sticking, but like they bump into each other. So I was thinking that they might be in the wrong spot. But when I took them out, they're labeled E and F. This one's labeled D. So that tells me it's like A, B, C, D, E, F. So that means they were in the right spot. And it also looks like this one can't go in the top, but I'm just not sure why they are sort of just like between here. These ones don't touch, but these ones are touching, so. I'll just have to figure that out. And I'll probably do some sanding on the edges and things like that, but I'm gonna go ahead and get this guy cleaned first. Now that I've used my White Lightning to clean everything, I am just going back with a damp cloth and rinsing everything, just making sure that all of the cleaner is off of there, and then also any last potential parts that didn't get completely cleaned. That'll also help everything just get completely cleaned and rinsed off. So this was from rinsing the outsides, and then also the darker spots were from cleaning out the inside of the dresser. So definitely an important thing to do to just grab all that dust from inside of there. We are going to switch gears now and make some repairs. So we're starting with my sander and making some repairs because this top to the nightstand and the other nightstand is very, very water damaged. And so I'm not exactly sure how I'm gonna approach this, so I'll kind of just be winging it. And my first step is just gonna be to see if I can sand any of this texture out. Basically, underneath this top layer of what I believe is wood veneer, or some type of not wood veneer, because usually wood doesn't do this. The water seeps down beneath it, and then you can see that it is some type of particle board or plywood, and that stuff absorbs water and then things expand. So that's what's happened here. I would say more than 50% of the top here has some sort of water damage. So again, I'm gonna try to sand that smooth, and then we will use some Bondo to make any necessary repairs and seal that in there so that the water damage won't occur again, even if water is on top of these. All right, I do believe we've got a pretty flat surface now. I went ahead and used 80 grit on the whole thing, and typically I would not recommend using an 80 grit on veneer, and I would not recommend sanding through the veneer, especially on purpose. But this was a little bit of a different case because I'm not trying to save this top wood layer. And with that water damage, it was important to even everything out. I'm going to sand the other one. Again, it is nowhere near as bad as this one was, but then once I get that one done, I can repair all of the tops. I am using my Surf Prep sander. It is a 3x4, and I've got it connected to my vacuum dust extractor. This just really helps eliminate the dust in the air. It's not just the sander alone though. It's important that you actually connect it to your dust extractor or shop vac or whatever you've got. And I love using my Surf Prep because it seems to be much more powerful than just any old regular orbital sander. So if you're in the market for a little bit of a higher end Surf Prep sander or any type of sander, I would recommend this one, and you can get 10% off with my code FFT10. That'll save you a little bit of money, and the link down below, or the link is down below in the description. So I got this top sanded down as well. Before we do the Bondo, I'm going to go ahead and reattach these front pieces that have fallen off. And I'm gonna do that with some wood glue. And then once that dries, I'll be able to also Bondo this crack right here that kind of runs across the top. That way we've got a completely seamless look on the top, and might as well do all the Bondo at once. So I'm just gonna use some Tight Bond wood glue here and glue a generous amount on this backer piece. I'm gonna tape it in place here. Painter's tape can sometimes be one of your best friends when flipping furniture. It has a lot of great usages. But for some extra assuredness that this thing is going to stay in place until it dries, and we're gonna clamp it on there, I got this clamp, I believe, as a Christmas or birthday gift from my brother a couple years ago. These long clamps are really nice to have on hand for things like this. So we've got some squeezing glue here, which is good. It's good to see that glue squeeze out. Kind of wish I had more clamps so that I could clamp this side as well. I have 2 only. I think since we've only got 2 clamps, I'm just gonna do 1 nightstand at a time. This has been drying for about 30 minutes, so I can't even move it now. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these clamps off so I can do the other one over there. Wood glue is super strong once it dries, so I'm confident that this will be plenty of reinforcement to hold it on there. I could use brad nails, but the real reason to use brad nails with the wood glue is honestly just to keep it in place while it's drying. And since I had the clamps, I just decided not to use the brad nails. So that one is on there nice and tight. There's absolutely no wiggling going on, which is something that is good. So again, like I said, I'll Bondo all this, but first I want to get this one glued on. That way it can start to dry while I move back. I like to do things while things are drying. That way we're not wasting any time. While this one is drying over here, I'm going to be applying some Bondo to repair the top of this nightstand first. So wherever I put the wherever I sanded down and went all the way through to the plywood, I'm gonna put some Bondo, as well as any of the cracks or dents or dings that I see. That way we can have a completely smooth surface. I use Bondo pretty much on every project. It's really great for the big gouges or dents or filling in hardware holes. But basically it's gonna be a 2-part solution here, and it hardens when you put the cream hardener substance with the base substance here. And you do want to work a little bit quick when you're using Bondo. I'm kind of going to get a bit more than I usually would because I've got a lot to fill in here. But the reason you want to work quick is because within less than 5 minutes, this stuff starts reacting together and hardening. So it should be completely hardened within about 15 minutes and able to be sanded. So you can imagine why it's important to work pretty quick. So we want to get it all one color, one consistency here like so. And then you can just start spreading it wherever you need the Bondo. You can use a stir stick like this, or you can use a little putty knife as well. This can kind of help you spread it a little bit better. So like I said, wherever there's plywood visible, that's where I'm gonna start putting the Bondo. All right, so that is going to be it for the Bondo on this guy. That's gonna harden, and then we'll go ahead and do it on that one. But while that one's drying and this one's hardening, I also need to fill some of the drawers up here. My client wanted me to go ahead and get rid of this little indent on these 2 drawers. We're gonna be doing something different with the top drawer. So while I've got my Bondo out, I'm gonna mix up a little bit more and get to Bondoing this section. Okay, I'm done with the Bondo filling for at least round 1. I know for sure I'm gonna have to do for sure one more coat of it because it's a big, deep place that I'm filling in. So it'll just dry and harden, and then I'll sand it, and then I'll do another layer. But I think this up here is dry now, so I'm gonna go ahead and take these clamps off and put the Bondo on the top here before this dries out.
All right, full tops are covered in Bondo. So we're gonna let that dry, and then we'll come back and smooth it out to see how much more we need to apply. All right, they are all smoothed out. That's awesome. I'm not gonna need to do another coat of Bondo on the tops. Again, they weren't big gouges, but it was just important to seal up any of the particle board areas, as well as make sure that they were all evened out. So on this one, you can tell that some of them were like a little bit lower in some spots because the Bondo didn't come off when I was just sanding straight on, and some of it did. So that means that that would have been even with the top layer. So we just wanted to even it all out. And then now I do need to do another coat of Bondo on the drawer fronts, which I already knew that I would need to. So I'm gonna get that going so that we can get the process, continue on the process, because the Bondo hardens and then you gotta wait and stuff like that. So important to kind of go as quick as you can if possible. Next up, I am gonna be scuff sanding this big guy as well as the rest of the nightstands where I didn't already sand and repair. I also need to sand down this little area where I made a tiny repair with some Bondo. And the reason I'm scuff sanding is so that we can get rid of any of this glossiness and to really allow that paint and primer to adhere really nicely. All right, everything is sanded, and scuff sanded, and all that jazz. That part of prep is done. Now we are going to be kind of reconstructing the nightstands just a little bit. My client has requested, if possible, that we put some legs on these two nightstands. So I need to actually cut them down a little bit so that they aren't too tall when the legs go on them. I've done some measuring and I got about 4-inch legs, so we're not adding too much to the height of the nightstands, because if they're too high, it would just be so awkward next to a bed. So let's go ahead and chop off the bottoms. So every time that you look at the bottom of a piece of furniture, chances are it's going to be different than another piece of furniture that you may look at. So for this one, I've got some, I kind of figured out why it's so heavy. There's tons of particle board on the insides here, as well as on the bottom here. I don't really know why the person who constructed it like this, but I guess it worked. It's really heavy. But anyway, there are some screws here that are attaching to the side. So I'm gonna go ahead and unscrew those and then see where that gets me, to see if these are just going to kind of pull off, or if I'm going to have to kind of pry them off instead. Trying to think of, I don't think these are gonna come off as easily as I thought. So I think I'm just gonna go for it with my circular saw. Just trying to figure out how much I want to cut off. I was thinking like 3 inches. That's a little bit more than right there. So then I was kind of thinking a little less than 3, it'd be like 2 3/4. I think we're gonna try that. So I need to set this on its side and get my circular saw ready. I'm planning on putting some type of trim around that bottom anyway. So as long as the legs are even when I put them on and it's not rocking, this should be good. So I'm gonna do the same thing on this guy over here. They're pretty sturdy still. So I'm gonna clean up this mess and then move on to the next step. Now that that big mess is cleaned up, it's time to move to the next step, which is sort of going one step farther and making them look as if they came from the same set, as I said in the beginning. So the way that we are going to tie them together even more is to add a little detail on the top drawers, and I'm going to be adding that detail with a bamboo mat. I've seen this done especially over on Instagram. You can also do it with pole wrap, but this is just a much cheaper method. This mat is from Amazon. You can get tons of different lengths. I believe mine's like 72 inches, which is the longest one. I'll link it down below for you in the description. But again, it's just a fun way to give a little bit of interest and texture on your pieces of furniture. So I am going to be cutting this down to size to fit the top drawer. So the 2 on the tall one and then 1 on the nightstands. These drawers are 31 inches long and then about 4.5 inches tall. So that means I'm gonna need about 9 inches and 31 inches, and then I'll cut that in half. So I'm gonna cut this using my miter saw because that's the way that I'm gonna be able to get the easiest cut. But first, I want to go ahead and sort of take the backing off of this so that way it sticks really well and really flat to my drawers here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut into the sections into the 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. I do wanna go ahead and measure these. This is a little tricky because they are like on a curved surface, but it looks to be about 3.5. So 2 3.5s and 2 4.5s. So that's 9 plus 7 is 16. Oh, perfect. We'll have plenty for just this one little roll here. I think to keep this together, I'm gonna try like taping it once or twice, just so that it all stays as one big bundle here. Okay, next up, since I've got all these cut down to size with my miter saw, I am gonna go ahead and glue them on here. So some of them splintered a little bit, but I can fix that a little bit later with some wood filler. I'll just make sure to get those off, but I want them to be attached to the drawer before I do that. And I'm gonna do that with some wood glue. I'm gonna go ahead, I decided to leave the backer on there. I've seen other people take it off, but I don't see a problem with having it on there. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'll let you know if it doesn't work or hold up. So now you can see why I didn't fill in this little design on this, because I'm gonna be covering it. All right, so the wood glue does need to dry for probably at least 30 minutes before I mess with it at all. But what I do need to do is go ahead and sand it, because I do need it to be scuffed up just as if it were a piece of furniture. So once it dries, that's what I'm gonna do next. All right, we're gonna tackle the bottoms of these nightstands now. I've got them flipped over, and what I need to do is attach some trim so that we can basically mask this plywood that's open here, particle board that's open here. And so instead of just doing one piece only on the front, I'm actually gonna have it wrap around, and it's gonna be on all 3 sides. So I need to go ahead and measure and then cut it, and I'm gonna do a mitered cut, so that way it's a nice and seamless transition from the front to the side here. All right, now that I got everything for the trim pieces cut to size, I am going to go ahead and use my brad nailer and nail it on here. I think I'm actually gonna also grab some wood glue just to reinforce it that much more onto this particle board area. Then I'll go in and I'll wood fill these holes where I have my brad nailer, and then you won't even be able to tell that that was done. And I'll do all of that before I prime or anything, and then that'll get primed. So now that we've got these trim pieces all on and attached, I do need to grab some Bondo and fill in those little nail holes, as well as just make sure that the seams are very seamless, so that you can't even tell that they're like 3 different pieces of wood.
The Bondo is going to be hardening, so I'm going to go ahead and put the legs on here. I would typically put the legs on last so I didn't have to cover them up when I'm painting and stuff, but since I added this trim, these pieces can't just sit on the trim itself, so that's why I'm going to go ahead and add the legs so they have something to stand on, and then I'll just go ahead and tape them while I'm spraying on the paint in just a little bit. These legs are just 4 inches, so we'll lift them off the ground just a tad bit. I believe they'll just be about 1 inch taller than they were before I cut the base off, I guess you could call it. So I'm just gonna position these to be in the corners of this nightstand. And I got these legs off of Amazon. I like getting legs off of Amazon because it comes with all the hardware that you might need to install them. Some of them even come with a screwdriver, which I'm not too sure why, because it's much easier and faster if you use a drill. But I have a little collection of screwdrivers from Amazon legs that I got going back there. Time to sand the Bondo. I can't believe I'm saying this, and hopefully I don't jinx it, but we're almost done with prep here. The last part of the prep before we actually prime is to spray the tops of these with shellac. Shellac is going to be an oil-based, sort of like primer, but this one that I'm choosing is actually a sealer, and it's clear. So the sealer is going to help seal in any type of wood tannins, which Dixie Belle Boss does as well. It's water-based, but I'm gonna use that second after I use the shellac. And the reason I wanna use the oil-based shellac first is to seal up the particle board that is popping out on the top. If you remember way back at the very beginning, there was a ton of water damage here, and I had to sand down the top all the way to that particle board. If I don't seal that with the shellac, then it will just continue to expand if I put water-based products over the top of it. So that is the reasoning for me to use the shellac first. And then again, like I said, we'll do Dixie Belle Boss second. All right, this stuff dries pretty quickly, so once it's dry, we'll be able to do some Boss. I'm gonna pour some gray Boss into my sprayer here through my strainer, so that way I don't get any type of chunks down there in my sprayer. I had about half of this can left. Probably won't use it all, but I'm just gonna go ahead and put it all in there, and then I'll put any excess back here in the jar. I'm gonna be spraying these pieces so that I can just get maximum smoothness on the finish. My client did specifically ask for there to be absolutely no brushstroke marks, so that is a way I can achieve this, is by using my sprayer. This is the Wagner Flexio 3000. And I'll link a similar model down below from Amazon. They're a really inexpensive way to get a really smooth finish. So highly recommend the Wagner sprayers. They're also pretty much very beginner friendly as well. I'm gonna go ahead and test out my spray pattern here. That is a major key when you are spraying, because every single paint or product you put inside of your spray gun is going to come out differently.
So it's important that you test it to make sure that you're not getting splattering or anything that's going wrong with your sprayer. All right, honestly, that's never happened to me before, but we had a great spray pattern right off the bat. I didn't have to do any different adjustments. So let's go ahead and spray some Boss. Boss is on. So once that dries, we'll do a little bit of just looking over the pieces, making sure that everything is smooth, and then we will paint them the color that we are gonna paint them. It is the next day, and after that primer dried, I knew that I was gonna be able to see any leftover imperfections, especially on the tops here where I sanded a whole bunch. And I am seeing some textured spots and some spots where you can still basically tell that the particle board is popping through, as well as some of the wood grain. So I am gonna do one, hopefully last round of Bondo here so that I can just get a super smooth finish. Yeah, my Bondo hardened before I was able to use it all the way, the part that I made. So made a little too much, I guess, before it could harden. That's why I tell you guys all the time, if you don't want to waste product, just do really small batches. It stinks to make it over and over and over again, but again, I'm wasting a lot of Bondo because it hardens so quickly. Something that I do in between coats of primer and paint is I look over the surface that I have primed or painted, and I just look for any imperfections to see if anything needs to be wood filled again, or if I can just go straight into my next step. So you'll see a lot of wood grain going on here, but because I'm going to be painting these black, I really don't think that it's an issue on the fronts of the drawers. The reason I wanted to fill the tops is because I want those to be as smooth as can be. But the one thing that I am a little bit unsure about is the part where I filled the Bondo, where there was that little indent in the drawers. So I'm not gonna really be able to tell 100% if I'm still gonna be able to see those marks until I get that black paint on there. So at this point, I am good with how the drawers are looking right now. And once I get that first coat of black on, I'll decide from there if I need to do another coat of Bondo or if I'm good to just leave the black as is and go ahead and do a second coat. All right, time to get my sprayer filled. We are gonna be painting with Dixie Belle's Silk Mineral Paint in the color Anchor. This is probably my go-to black paint. I love the finish on it. It is a true black, and they are actually now selling them in the 32 ounces versus just the 16. So you get a little bit more bang for your buck when you purchase the larger quantities. And they have these not in all of the colors, but mostly in the ones that are like the black and the white. So I'm gonna go ahead and strain it just like I did with my primer. Okay, I got it all filled up here, and one of the reasons why I really like the Wagner sprayers is because the nozzle portion of this is actually removable, and you can get new nozzles to be able to use different products in each one. So here I've got my primer that I used yesterday and then a little bit today. But instead of having to go clean this one all out and then put paint in it, I've just got another nozzle and I have my paint in there and I can just attach that and we're ready to go. So that way cleanup happens all at once later on, and different nozzles for different ones. I also like to keep a different nozzle for my top coats. That way the clear only goes through the top coat, or only goes through one nozzle. It's time for coat number 2. We kind of moved into the garage because it's super, super windy out today, and it's kind of blowing the paint everywhere, but also blowing a lot of things onto the surface and then drying when the wet paint. So we want to try and avoid that at all costs. I also went ahead and sanded smooth the first coat just with a very fine piece of sandpaper on my orbital sander. And so, like I said, we're ready for coat number 2. I'm still gonna test out my spray pattern once more to make sure we're all good to go. And then I'll be doing second coat on everything. Second coat is finished. So that is gonna dry overnight, and then we'll come back and check everything out in the morning. The second coat is dry, so we've got these flipped over so I can go ahead and remove this green tape to reveal the legs again. Sometimes when you're spraying furniture and there's sort of like an underside of your furniture, it may miss a little bit because it's a really difficult angle to get. So it's important to lay it down on its back and just see if there's any areas where maybe that need to get touched up. So as you can see, not a lot of paint got right here. So I am just going to take my paintbrush and a little bit of paint and sort of touch up in those areas. I have some new hardware that I'm going to be attaching to these nightstands and dresser. So we've got a 6 1/4 inch pole here that I'm going to put on the 2 bottom drawers of the nightstands. And then I grabbed these really neat brass knobs on Amazon. Pretty cheap too, and it came in a pack of 10. And I am going to be putting 2 of these on the top drawer right here. So for the handles here, I like to use my hardware jig because I know for sure that if I use this and position it correctly the first time, I don't have to reposition it any other times throughout the time when I'm using the same measurements for each handle. So I love using this jig. It's about $15 on Amazon, and it is totally worth the money to not have to worry about are you getting level holes when you're re-drilling hardware holes. So definitely a great little tool to have on hand, and you can even put it to the desired height by moving this little guy up or down, depending on how high, or like if you want it in the middle of the drawer, toward the top of the drawer, toward the bottom of the drawer. And then I've already got these positioned. It happened to be that the last hardware I used actually was the same measurement, so didn't have to move that. That's always a plus. Now that I've got this dresser assembled as well, there's just one more little thing that I wanted to do to tie in the nightstands that much more. Since these legs have some gold on them, I talked with my client and she also would like to put a little bit of gold on the feet of the bigger dresser as well. So not on the back too, because those are just like square legs and it probably wouldn't look the best. And so I'm just going to do the very bottom portion of these feet of the legs so that can just tie right in. I'm using my gold gilding wax from Dixie Belle, and this does not need any type of top coat because once it dries, it'll be on there for good. And it is an oil-based product. So that is something to keep in mind. If you don't want to get it on your hands, it'll kind of stain them for just a little while. But that's one reason it doesn't need a top coat, because it'll cure all on its own. We're done. I'm so excited. It came a long way since the beginning where they didn't match at all, and now they are actually looking somewhat like a set. You can obviously still tell that they aren't made the same way. There's completely different styles, but because of the color matching, the hardware matching, and even the little details on the legs, they look a lot more like a set than they did at first. I actually decided this time that I would write down every single minute that I spent on these pieces of furniture. That way I could show you guys that it's truly, I mean, you guys watch the videos, but it's truly more than just slapping paint on a piece of furniture. And this is why it's important that when you're doing commission sets, or even when you're selling furniture that you're just doing on your own and then putting on Facebook Marketplace, that you charge what you are seriously worth, and the work that goes into it is worth the money that you are charging. So over here, I've added up everything, and I'm not gonna go through it because you guys just watched it, but from cleaning and all the way up until the touch-ups, I added up the time, and we are at about 12 hours and 35 minutes. So that is a pretty long project. Typically, I would say mine are anywhere from 6 to 8 hours on a project, but these did need a little bit more love and a little bit more work. So you guys have waited till the end to figure out what I actually charged my client to do these pieces. This, I'm going to tell you, is without the delivery fees. We'll talk about the delivery and pickup in just a minute, but flat fee of $950 to just do the pieces of furniture. This entails all of the materials that I grabbed to complete these, including hardware, including paint, primer, literally everything that went into it. I basically added up everything when we were talking about what these pieces were gonna look like and what I would need to purchase. So all of that is included in the $950 that I charged her. After all of those things that I put into it, like the knobs, the new handles, the paint, the primer, we are right at $200 worth of material. So really not too bad for how nice the hardware is. It's very heavy and it is it is high quality hardware and furniture legs. So that's something that you don't want to skimp out on just to get a little bit more profit. Totally not worth it because you want your client to have a good end result. So now that means we've made a total profit of $750 for 12 and a half hours of work. And you guys always like to see what that equals per hour. So we divide that by 12 and that gives us about $60 per hour if we were doing an hourly wage, which really is not too bad if you ask me. 12 and a half hours of work. It was a lot of work, and
some of it is a little bit strenuous. So definitely earned that $60 an hour, but a total of $750 profit. I will take that any day of the week. Also, last but not least, the delivery fee. We always offer that we will go pick up the furniture and deliver it back to their house, or they can do it themselves. If it is in our area, we charge $50 per way, and she did go ahead and invest in that delivery and pickup. So we already picked it up and we did the $50 and then plus $50 when we go and deliver it. So that equals us another $100. We're not going to be using $100 worth of gas or anything like that. So again, taking into consideration your time and the kind of stress of getting them over there in one piece and having to worry about them for that much longer. So good. Perfect. Oh, I love this. Delivered. Check. At the end of the day, I just want to continue to reiterate to you guys that you don't have to go out and buy new furniture, and neither do the people around you. So offer up your services, continue to flip that furniture and sell it on Facebook Marketplace. And if you would like to get a part of our furniture flipping course, I teach you exactly how I earned $25,000 worth of money by flipping furniture, and then I was able to pay off my student loan debt. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, all of those links are down below in the description. Thank you to Dixie Belle for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you on the flip side.